What's up? It's your boy, Skinny Penis. No, just kidding. It's me, Random, Dagger, Dag, whatever you want to call me, Tyler. And I'm making this guide to show my guild how to go through their stat progression a little better, and kind of do a little more research about how their character should be progressing and kind of how to keep up with that over time. So just pulling up my character screen here, and I can see, everything that, I'm supposed to see as a character, and I can kind of start tracking my stats from here. See, I have an 866 item level with some items in my bag. That nice little guy right there. That kind of increased my item level. But what does item level really mean compared to, what you can actually do with your character? For example, if I was a mage and I had an 870 item level, but I only had 20% crit, I'd be a shit mage, or a fire mage at least, because crit is a very important stat for a fire mage to have. And I pick on fire mages because that's the easiest example to make, because if every single piece of gear a fire mage has doesn't have crit on it, it's a useless piece of gear. And sometimes you see fire mages walking around with pieces of gear with like haste mastery or versatility mastery simply because it's an item upgrade, simply because that's the culture of World of Warcraft that we live in nowadays. But if you're in a raiding guild, it doesn't matter. You're already on a raid's roster, you're getting your gear, and you want to make sure you're getting appropriate upgrades. So I'm going to kind of walk you guys through how to quickly make those types of decisions in WoW. So, for example, I'm mousing over my legendary belt right now, and you can see all these percentage upgrades on my screen, and you can also see down there at the bottom, so there's Blood, Frost, and Unholy, and then there's Random Decay. That's the stat string that I imported myself personally, so I can kind of see where I'm at, and that's based off of sims I've run on my own character. And talking to some of you guys in guild, you don't actually know how to use SimCraft or how to run sims on your character, or how to look up or use Ask Mr. Robot, or how to use the add-on Pawn Anyway, which is what gives me that information. And those are really key things to be paying attention to when it comes to making sure that your character progression is accurate. So what I'm going to do first here is I'm going to take you guys to Simulation Craft, because we're going to look at first how to run a sim on your character. So I'm going to open up my browser here. This is Ask Mr. Robot. We're not going to look at that just yet, but we're going to start out looking at Simulation Craft. This pulls me right into this piece here, but I actually want to go to the home page. So from the home page here, we want to download the actual Simulation Craft installer. So don't download the 64-bit 7-zip file. Instead, download the installer. The installer is going to run the installer right away, and it's going to give you the actual application. After you finish installing that, this is going to be the application. It looks just like their homepage, really. This is going to be the actual application itself. So, on top of that, what we also need to do is go into Curse, and we need to find the Simulation Craft add-on itself. So, we need to come in here, and we need to pull up Simulation Craft. Alright? And so, I use the Curse client. We're going to go to Get More Add-ons, and we're going to search Simulation. And that's just going to give us right there Simulation Craft, right off the bat. Install that as well. You're going to need these two things, and they're going to work in synchrony with each other. So, here's how we're going to do this. First, you need to open up your Simulation Craft application. Fastest way I do this is literally just type in sim, and I can see my Simulation Craft application right there. From here, we need to go to import. You're going to select your realm from this list right here. You're going to find your character, Random DK. you're going to import that character, and that's going to import all of your information from the armory onto here. But do not click simulate yet. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to options, and we're going to make sure that our armory region is accurate. It's US. We have our active armory spec. We can also switch to an inactive spec as well if you want to sim a different spec. The main thing is this, iterations. You want 25,000 iterations running. This is going to run 25,000 different simulations. This is just going to give you really, really accurate results. I wouldn't go above 25,000 because that's going to put a huge strain on your CPU itself. And that's just going to be an issue. And I doubt anyone wants to really go through that. I need to disable scaling here. We'll go over scaling later when we get into pawn. But this is basically how you set this up. I also like to make sure I do as many threads as possible. 8 threads. I really wouldn't worry about any of these other things. I've never noticed this player skill thing, but keep that as elite. But yes, keep all of these other settings the same. Only change your iterations to 25,000. Make sure your armory region is correct. Your armory spec is current. Your version is live. And your threads are up to 8. That's your max. Now, we need to go to the import tab again. Or no, sorry. We need to go to the simulate tab here. What you're going to see here is some character information. And then down, scrolling all the way down to the bottom, so using your scroll bar on the side here, scroll all the way down to the bottom, and you're going to come down to this piece right here, these last 2 paragraph type things, right? We're going to delete all this. Just delete it. That's going to cause some issues because we're basically going to be using this application to test a couple of things here. So, when we start out, we're going to take this, we're actually going to delete this as well, this top paragraph. Now we finally go into World of Warcraft. Now, you've installed the Simulation Craft add-on. What we need to do is get a command from it. So we're going to go type in /simc, no spaces, anything like that, and hit enter. And that's going to bring up this dialog. Don't click anything. Don't click OK, don't click anything. You hit Control C. Now, go back into your Simulation Craft application, and we're going to paste that right here at the top. See what that did? That took that top and that bottom paragraph, and it kind of just put them all into one little thing here. Now we're finally ready to run a simulation. So we've got all our information in there, and we'll click simulate. Takes a couple of minutes here. Alrighty, now up here at the top, you can see what your simulation DPS is itself. This is going to tell you what your gear and your spec and all of that is giving you. And that's really important stuff. You can also use this, all of this information down here, to see which abilities kind of gave you your most DPS and stuff like that, and how your DPS kind of played out over the course of the 400-second fight. This gives you your average DPS right there, same number that's up there. You can look through. There's a lot of useful information in here. There's obviously not enough time in a single video to go over that. Look at your procs, your statistics and data analysis. I mean, there's a million things. It can even give you your action priority list. So, it's telling me that with this current gear, the average amount of DPS that my character can pull now is 296,370 DPS. Don't look at this number and think that's exactly the amount of DPS I need to be doing. That's not correct. This is on a patchwork style fight where you don't need to move for an entire, where you don't need to move for 10 whole minutes. That type of fight doesn't exist. Not even normal Ursoc. You need to move a little bit at least. So that number is basically you sitting on a boss with full raid buffs, using your rotation without having to move one time. Now, why do this? Well, that's because I'm going to compare an item. I'm going to take my Dark Moon trinket that I have down here. I'm going to replace this 865 trinket. Now I'm going to type the simc command again. Getting a couple whispers there. We're going to copy this string. I'm going to go back to my simulation craft here. Click simulate. We're going to start up a new string. I'm going to delete this top piece again. We're just going to paste back in there one more time. And we're going to simulate again. Now, what we can do here is we can see what the DPS number was compared to using that 865 trinket. See the difference? This is a great way to compare your items really easily. What I do whenever I get a new drop, if I'm not sure it's actually going to be an upgrade, I'll plug it into Simulation Craft and check. Now, Simulation Craft is useful for another thing as well. In our options panel up top, we can click scaling, and we're going to click enable scaling. Now we're going to go down here and calculate scale factors 4. You want to click all the stats that are useful for you. So for me, I'm a Death Knight. I'm going to need to click strength, I need to click stamina, and then our basic 4 stats: crit, haste, mastery, versatility. Now we can go back up here to simulate. I can click here, and we're just going to delete everything. We're going to go from a blank slate on this because we're using this for scaling. We're going to paste this string in here. That's my best gear set. We're going to click simulate. This simulate's going to take a lot longer. From here, I'm not going to wait on it because it does take so long. So I'm going to click back into WoW. I'm going to type in /pawn. This is the pawn add-on. From here we have a lot of different scales for my class that I'm logged into. In here, I can kind of customize what the values of different stats are for my character specifically, based off of simulations that I've run on my character itself. You can get some of these values from websites, but personally, I think it's a lot better if I just use values that I've run on my own character specifically. This way, I can kind of keep a good track on the way my character's progressing. Oh, looks like he logged off. So, go back into Simulation Craft and see how this is running. See that now it's adding a couple of extra steps. We're scaling crit. We've got 4 more stats to go through after this. After it finishes scaling, I'll show you where to get that string. First, we're going to go in here. The add-on that we're looking for is pawn. So, from the Get More Add-ons tab, we just search for pawn. I obviously don't need to install it because I already have it. And you just want to install the basic pawn. You don't need to get any of those other things on there, just pawn. That's all you need. Almost done with the sim there. There's also a really nice compare feature where if I were to if I were to drop these items in together, you can kind of see how to compare these things to each other. Looks like this is finishing up. What we're going to do here is we're going to scale down, and right here's your pawn string. You're going to copy this entire string right here with Control C and go back into your World of Warcraft client. Type in /pawn and click the Scale tab down here at the bottom. You're going to import a scale itself and just hit Control V and click OK. That's going to give you your stat weights for your class specifically based on all of these things. That's how I get those percentage upgrade markers on all of my items when I mouse over them. This add-on is really helpful for making a quick judgment on an item. Now, when we simulated this trinket, it simulated at a lower DPS. But what if I want to compare it on the fly using pawn? I'm going to use the compare tab, drop it in there. I'm going to grab this Dark Moon Deck Dominion, and I'm going to see which one's actually a higher upgrade. Because I pasted a pawn string from Simcraft, it actually runs a sim on these things. So it's telling me that having my Dark Moon Deck Dominion equipped is still the better move. It increases my crit better. It increases, and because crit is rated so high over haste and mastery, Nature's Call is actually a bad trinket for me. So I keep the Dark Moon Deck Dominion on. Even though I have a higher item level item right there, the Dark Moon Deck Dominion's better because of the flat crit increase. Now we're going to get into Ask Mr. Robot. This is a great site that I love to use. This site has a really powerful gear optimizer. What you need to do when you first log in is do an armory update of your character. The last time you logged out, it should have done that. See, it still has my Nature's Call add-on equipped. Trinket equipped, sorry. So I'm going to leave World of Warcraft. Wait a couple seconds. I'm going to update the page. Then I'm going to click Armory Update. One more time. Anyway, never mind. Not the point here. So, getting on with this. You can do a best in bags selection here. You need the add-on in-game. I haven't played with this much, but basically it'll tell you, based on items that are in your bag, what your best gear setup actually is. On this, there's also the upgrade finder. If you click Find Upgrades, it'll check your item. It'll check sims that it has, and it'll figure out what your best in slot items are for upgrades. For example, it says I really need a Shadow Relic. But if you also look at this, it's putting the Shadow Relic at item level 865. That's Heroic Emerald Nightmare gear. Also, you'll notice there's a Despoiled Dragon scale at 865, and then another one right here at 850. So it'll include items at multiple item levels. For example, right here, this is a breastplate that drops off of Oakheart in Darkheart Thicket. It's showing up as an item level 880 item. we know that only 840 comes out of Dark Heart Thicket, unless you're doing really high Mythic Plus. That shows you that the drop chance down here, almost 0. Up here on rarity, you can change. Medium chance or better, low chance or better. Or you can still choose to just look at everything. On top of that, let's say I want to find better trinkets, because I know my Nature's Call trinket isn't good for me. I can type in trinket, and it'll tell me all my best in slot trinkets. You can see right here, the Chrono Shard at item level 850 is incredibly powerful. That's because of its set bonus, I believe. This trinket's really great for a lot of different classes because of the amount of haste that you can end up getting. On top of that, the Memento of Angobrota from Yimaron in Maw of Souls is a really great trinket for me. If I were to have both of these, or even the Nightmare Eggshell, it'd be great upgrades for me. As a result, I can start to target these items, and from there, start building a much more powerful character. There's also a best in slot calculator. As we can see right here, it'll basically tell you whether or not the items that you're wearing are actually best in slot for you. On top of that, it'll show you, if you don't have a best in slot item, what the best in slot item is for you on that slot. And it'll tell you where to get it. For example, the crown off of Cenarius is a best in slot helmet for me. But looking at my stat progression, I know that crit and haste are my top stats. But why is mastery on this item? That's because I've hit a haste cap. At 20% approximately, there's really no additional added bonus for me. So, beginning to put mastery on my items after hitting that 20% haste mark isn't a bad idea. Because all of my other items in this set with only best in slot, mastery makes sense. On top of this, it's telling me to go crit enchants. Because I don't have all of these items, I go haste enchants in game. Because my haste is still low without these items specifically. What you can also do is simulate what this setup is. You can choose the version of the game you want to use, a boss script, a rotation, and a sim type. I usually keep these things on these settings right here. Right there tells me that my DPS with that setup is going to approximate to about 283,000 DPS on a single target boss fight. The boss fight length, 450 seconds, plus or minus 20%. It gives you a lot of different things here. I like this sim more than Simulation Crafts because it can kind of show you what your actual rotation is kind of going to look like and where your damage is coming from on different abilities much more accurately than Simcraft, because that uses just a patchwork fight. This uses just a single target fight and accounts for moving. All of these tools are very useful for figuring out just how important stats are for your character. Item level doesn't mean as much this expansion as it has in past expansions. Getting your rotation down is only the first step to learning how to play your character. Having correct stat progression is imperative if you're going to start pushing for high numbers on boss fights, which are required for killing mythic fights. Thanks for watching, and hope you guys learned something.